Welcome into the Dynasty After Party brought to you by Club Fantasy. As always, I am one of your hosts, Michael Sicoli, joined by Joel Wirth. How are you today?
I'm good, man. Just hit my mute button there. Yeah, doing well. We are 11 weeks from the season starting, so it was kind of hot here today. So we're kind of getting into summer, like first Sunday of summer, right?
Wild hot. I went in the pool. I was jumping in the water. I just had to. I was cannonballing in, just like we're going to be doing this show tonight. We're going to be cannonballing into three teams again for the Look Inside series that's been going on at clubfantasy.ffl.com. Be sure to check out the detailed write-ups that we've been putting out there because they have been really good. And this week, I'm tooting my own horn because we're talking about the Jets. I wrote about the Jets. Joel here wrote about the Packers, and we had lovely Faith talking about the Patriots. So we're going to get into all that real quick. But first, I just want to tell you where you can find our stuff. So clubfantasyffl.com, like I said, has all that written content that you love to see. You can follow myself at Michael__Scully on Twitter. You can follow Joel here at the Joel Wirth again on Twitter. So be sure to check that out. Subscribe to YouTube. I do a lot of shorts for Club Fantasy. So be sure to check out the YouTube page. Anyway, let's jump into our kickoff segment, our party crasher segment of the week. Doing something a little bit different this time, Joel. I don't know if you took a look. It's a little bit different than what we did in last week's. I'm going to throw out three headlines. I want you to order them from the most BS to the least BS. This is June. This is June, July, summer. The key of the summer is figuring out what's BS and what's not. And I chose three ridiculous headlines to talk to you about. So, number one, Tutu Atwell will have a role in the passing game per Sean McVay. Number two, Cordell Patterson will be involved in the passing game, according to AtlantaFalcons.com. And Sam Darnold currently has the lead on the number 2 role behind Brock Purdy over Trey Lance, according to Adam Schefter. So which one of the rank these headlines for me of most BS to least BS?
So the Tutu Atwell and the Cordell Patterson, I'm going to say, are the lesser BS just because they're technically true, but kind of meaningless, right? They'll have a role, but who cares? Tutu Atwell is not a legitimate NFL player. He's not a fantasy relevant player. Cordell Patterson is 32, 33, something like that.
37, yeah, something like that. Yeah,
so
I got you. Yeah.
He's probably going to have some kind of role, but we're already saying, Drake London's not going to get enough targets. Kyle Pitts isn't getting enough targets, and now we're worrying about Cordell Patterson. No, he'll have a role in the passing game, maybe as a decoy, but he's not going to be a fantasy factor in any way whatsoever. The Trey Lance thing, I'll keep my opinions on Adam Schefter aside. I don't really take anything he says seriously, just because he's a mouthpiece, right? He's a conduit for what those teams want to get out there. So half of it's true, half of it's just complete nonsense. I cannot believe for 1 second that Trey Lance is not going to beat out Sam Darnold. I refuse to believe it. We've heard reports that he's kind of refined his throwing motion. He's in his third year. He doesn't have the experience, that we would have hoped he would have had by now. But Sam Darnold's had plenty of experience. He's had plenty of opportunities to show us that he is not an NFL relevant quarterback. So I'm going to say that's the most BS.
I've been a Sam Darnold truther for quite some time. I won't lie, and he deserves some credit for what he did early in the year with the Carolina Panthers. They were off to a good start with Sam Darnold, but I tend to agree. I'll say I personally say the most BS is Tutu Atwell because he is not an NFL player, like you said, and it's not a good offense, but they're deep enough to not have Tutu Atwell on the field. But not going to waste time with Tutu Atwell. Cordell Patterson, I put somewhere in the middle, and yeah, I firmly expect Trey Lance to beat out Sam Darnold, but I'm going to raise this question to you because I'm currently on the clock in a best ball, as I'm sure we all are at some point of our days. I couldn't bring myself to draft him, and I'm ashamed to say this, but I took Jimmy Garoppolo over Trey Lance as my QB3 in last night. I took him in the 11-6. Trey Lance is still here. If he doesn't get picked right now, he will come back around to me. Nobody's willing to take him. Other quarterbacks on the board is Will Levis, Jacoby Brissett is the backups. Trey Lance is still here, and I think people are accepting it. I think people think Brock Purdy is going to be leading this team.
Yeah, and a best ball, I think it's reasonable to take Garoppolo first, right? Because he's going to have a job, health willing. which I expect to be the case. I don't think that foot thing's really going to be that big a deal.
I agree.
Yeah, there's the chance that they just go with Purdy. If I still have questions about that elbow holding up, but if he's good enough to get through training camp, I expect him to be the starter if he's healthy. I can see why you would want to kind of fade Lance in a best ball. There's no guarantee that literally could be a wasted roster spot. It could come through big, but that's kind of the nature of best ball.
And this is a dynasty show. I just wanted to focus on that real quick. Trey Lance, what would you say his pick value is right now? Because honestly, truthfully, we know he's a hold because nobody wants to buy him and nobody wants to sell him for the prices that each side wants. But if you had to assign, let's say you have a willing person who's willing to trade him for fair value, and if someone willing to buy him for fair value, early second in 2024.
I would want more than if I was selling. I would want more than a second, just because the upside is so huge. If he does get the job, whether it's in San Francisco or not, right? He could be traded. If Brock Purdy is healthy, and they believe that elbow is going to hold up, then he legitimately could be traded. That's where the kind of Sam Darnold thing comes in. Is he good enough to be the backup? So I still think he's the quarterback of the future. We didn't see anything from Brock Purdy to make us believe that he's an elite NFL quarterback, right? He didn't beat any good teams. He didn't beat any good teams on the road. He did beat Dallas in the playoffs, but that was more because Dak threw about 800 interceptions. It wasn't anything to do with his performance. Obviously, didn't even make it through the first half of the NFC Championship game. Yeah. He didn't win a game east of Glendale, Arizona last year. So he didn't beat a good defense. There's legitimate questions about how good a quarterback he is. He's a game manager. Is he ever going to be anything elite? I don't see it. I think Trey Lance has got much more upside than Purdy does. So I think he's a hold. I would want more than a 24-second. I kind of at the point where I'm ready to drop him below the rookies like Stroud and Bryce Young as an asset for this year. But
as a mark.
I still want to kind of, if the manager is selling him cheap, I want to buy.
Yeah, and you remember why Trey Lance was drafted in the first place. It's because they knew they had their ceiling with Jimmy Garoppolo, and you have to wonder, do the 49ers have a similar ceiling with Brock Purdy of just physical limitations or things like that? So it'll definitely be arguably the biggest story in the NFL to watch leading up to week one. Again, like you said, 11 weeks away or so. But let's talk about another huge story in the NFL. The New York Jets, led by your former Packer, Aaron Rodgers. I wrote about the New York Jets for the Look Inside series. Again, all those articles on the website at clubfantasyffl.com. Be sure to check those out. I wrote about Garrett Wilson. Now, I know you're wondering, Joel, especially you, how much can you talk about Garrett Wilson? This is somebody who's going in the top 10 of wide receivers in dynasty-wise. He's going much deeper, or much earlier even.
Yep.
Because he's such a young, talented player, and he had such a good rookie year. He had offensive rookie of the year caliber season, 1,100 yards on 83 receptions. But why I think he's going to be a top 5 wide receiver in 2023, and also which will cement him as a top 3 wide receiver in dynasty, he will go next year right behind Jamar Chase at number 3. I'm talking about these touchdowns. He is so due for positive touchdown regression, Joel. It's not even funny. Of 13 receivers who record 140-plus targets, again, that's a hell load, only Deontay Johnson and Michael Pittman had 4 fewer touchdowns. And that was a rookie quarterback and 0 quarterback with the Indianapolis Colts. So now Aaron Rodgers comes to town. He's coming off a down year, but even that down year was 26 touchdowns. That's something that the Jets haven't done in about 4 years. So, actually, sorry, not 4 years. Almost 10. 8 years ago was the last time the Jets have thrown for more than 26 touchdowns. That was Ryan Fitzpatrick in 2015. I think all those things bounce back. I think touchdowns are set to come, and also catch percentage. I don't want to go on a huge rant here with Garrett Wilson, but this was my piece. I'm going off here. Garrett Wilson had one of the worst catch percentages of guys with significant value, and that's because of how inaccurate the targets were. Of 22 receivers, I'm throwing this out here, 22 receivers that had 1,000 yards in 2022, only Devontae Adams had a worse catch rate than Garrett Wilson. Devontae Adams is not a bad wide receiver, and neither is Garrett Wilson. That's because the quarterback play was bad. So if targets go up to even 65%. Yeah, I could see a 10% jump with Aaron Rodgers. I wouldn't be surprised at all. You get a 10% boost in catch rate plus touchdown regression for someone that was already knocking on the door of being a mid to high end wide receiver 2 with non-competent quarterback play. I think Garrett Wilson's ceiling is true wide receiver 1 on the year, and I think he's going to have a top 5 season.
I won't push back against that.
I know it's a lot.
Yeah, I don't see. I mean, we talked about this when we did the Aaron Rodgers show when he got traded. I don't see, like, he's certainly good enough where he could have kind of a random wide receiver 1 season. I don't think he belongs in that kind of Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp tier where they're guys that we expect to be wide receiver 1 in a given year. I just don't think he has that kind of upside. That's not to say he's not very, very good. He is. Obviously, he's elite. He's, depending on who you talk to, he's around wide receiver 5. Some people are going to have A.J. Brown in front of him. Some are going to have Amon-Ra St. Brown in front of him. Most will have CeeDee Lamb and Cooper Kupp in front of him. But yeah, that's nothing to sneeze at, certainly. I just don't know if he's kind of I don't think he has like Devontae Adams size, because Aaron Rodgers wants to throw at the goal line, right? We'll talk about that when we get to Breece Hall, to where I think that's going to be a real detriment to Breece Hall, at least this year, because Aaron Rodgers wants to throw at the goal line so much, and I think that's going to be a problem for him. But I don't know that he's kind of the physical presence that Devontae Adams was, that kind of commanded end zone, close in targets. So I expect him to have more than 4 touchdowns, certainly. But I don't know if he's got double-digit touchdown upside. Let's say that.
I understand that. And you do have to factor in, Allen Lazard will get his red zone touches. It's someone that Aaron Rodgers trusts. He's a big body himself. He's a physical guy. That Allen Lazard will get his due. I'm just counting on such a large target share that he's already shown he could command. He already had over 25%, which is what that bar that I really want to see. He'll be close to 30%. I really do think he was already close to in his rookie season. In terms of the size, we look at, like, I just pull up another guy. Antonio Brown wasn't the biggest guy, and it's a different situation. You have prime Big Ben to non-prime Aaron Rodgers here, but you do still have somebody that was putting out 10 plus touchdowns on a regular basis because of the way the offense threw the ball in the red zone and the way how good Antonio Brown was in his prime. And I do think Garrett Wilson, probably not going to be on the level of would have been first ballot Hall of Famer if he didn't lose his head. And I think he's a close to elite wide receiver. I have him as my wide receiver 4 in Dynasty right now. In my loose rankings that are still subject to change, but I have him behind CeeDee Lamb, but ahead of A.J. Brown, like you were saying.
Yeah, that's reasonable. I don't want to make this out to be I'm dumping on Garrett Wilson or anything.
No, you hate Garrett Wilson. We get it. Just like last week, you hate on some guys.
Yes.
You hate on Garrett Wilson this week. Yeah,
exactly. I think he's in that second tier. I just don't think he belongs in that first tier of the Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp tier. Soon to have Marvin Harrison in it next year. I don't think he belongs in that tier. I think he's clearly, at the top of that second tier, and he's kind of interchangeable with whoever is in that. CeeDee Lamb, St. Brown, AJ Brown. All those guys are going to kind of rotate around, and they'll be, in any given year, they'll be, they'll switch kind of that order up. Chris Olave probably belongs in there. I think Olave belongs. Whatever we say about Garrett Wilson, kind of Chris Olave should be right. I think they're kind of the same player, right? So
I love Chris Olave.
They all belong.
We talked about it before.
Dynasty top 10. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So that's enough Garrett Wilson, because I could go all night with Garrett Wilson here on the after party, but I want to talk about some other guys on the Jets, because the Jets are an interesting offense all of a sudden. You touched on it before. Breece Hall. You mentioned a little bit about being concerned with Aaron Rodgers' love of throwing in the red zone. And Aaron Jones hasn't really scored in the recent years because he's been catching touchdowns. Breece Hall coming off the ACL tear, everything seems to be trending in the right way. But are you cooling on Breece Hall for the exorbitant dynasty cost that's being associated with him? Because he's a top 3 dynasty back right now in ADP.
Yeah, I think he belongs there, but I think he's a guy that I would be willing to move off of and then kind of try and buy back in later. for a couple of reasons. One is that, I just distrust guys coming off ACLs in their first year back, regardless of how serious it was. Unless you're Adrian Peterson, you don't tend to have, 100% year
MVP
that first year
seasons.
back. Right, exactly. So even the fact that he's, tear wasn't as severe as, say, Javonte Williams was, I still don't expect him to be kind of the guy we saw for the first 7 weeks last year. And as we brought up, Aaron Rodgers does not like to run the ball at the goal line. He's going to have free reign, right? They hired Nathaniel Hackett to build an offense around Aaron Rodgers and let Aaron Rodgers do what he wants. So he's going to throw the ball at the goal line. And I think that's going to be a drain on his touchdowns.
I think I agree to an extent. And I believe that this is still going to be, and we saw it in Green Bay, they're going to rotate the running backs. They're going to run the ball a decent amount. I think it's going to be a pretty balanced offense. I like Garrett Wilson not because I think the Packers are going to throw it 40 times a game, but because he's going to control a large part of the pie. I think it's going to be a near even split. We've seen in recent years with Nathaniel Hackett, his last year in Green Bay and his last year with Denver were almost identical in usage. It was no higher than 14th on passing attempts and no lower than 17th on rushing attempts on both swings of his stint in Denver and his stint in Green Bay. So when you look at that, I'm expecting a very even offensive pie, and I think that opens up a lot for the run game of Breece Hall to really, have a very strong season. Do I think he's going to be a top 3 running back? Probably not. But do I think he's a locked and loaded RB1? I do. And I do think that only the best is ahead for him. So dynasty-wise, I'm not buying because of that price tag. I get the idea of selling and then buying back in. I find that as an attractive idea that may be harder to execute because I feel like once Breece Hall's train gets going, there's no brakes for that thing. That thing will be flying as if it wasn't a train and it was a plane. So I'm holding. I'm holding firmly. I'm trying to get him where I can, but I think he's going to have an excellent season. I think it's going to be a really good season for the New York Jets, and maybe I'm optimistic about Aaron Rodgers, who we should talk about as well, obviously. Any expectation for Aaron Rodgers really did fall off a cliff for fantasy football last year, as well as a bit for the NFL, but no Devontae Adams. There are reasons for it. He seemed pretty disillusioned at the end with the Green Bay Packers. So what are you expecting out of Aaron Rodgers in terms of, I think both of us are not saying MVP, but I think we might expect something out of him.
Yeah, I mean, the production wasn't too far down, right? The touchdowns went from low 30s to 26. He hasn't been a rushing touchdown, a rushing threat in several years, so that's kind of irrelevant. It was just the yardage, right? The yardage went away, and that was because he wasn't very good, right? His accuracy was poor. He was really off on kind of downfield throws. He was kind of forcing things.
12 interceptions. It was his most interceptions since 2008.
Yeah, I mean, he's had this is a guy who once had 2 interceptions in a season, right? That 12 is a ton. And a lot of them were his fault, right? He was just forcing the balls. I don't know how much that changes. Should it be a more efficient offense than they were last year? It should be. I think he was a big part of the problem last year. So is he remotivated? He's at OTAs, which he wasn't with the Packers last year. How much does that matter? We'll kind of find out. I just don't know if he can regain that 2020, 2021 form again. I don't see, anything close to those MVP seasons. I think kind of the end is near. So we need to not compare him to Tom Brady, right? I talked about Russell Wilson and Drew Brees. That's not a fair comparison, and it's not a reasonable comparison. And we shouldn't compare literally anyone to Tom Brady, even someone as great as Rodgers has been. Right? Yeah, we should never expect that to happen again, to be honest. So he's approaching 40. He's going to be 40 this year, I believe. So the signs were there last year that the end is near. So I don't know that you can really expect anything more. If you go into the season expecting more than he did last year, I think you're probably in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, and that's why my argument with Garrett Wilson before kind of revolved around if he just gets that 26 touchdowns, because I think you're completely right. He had 37 the year before. You drop 50, you drop 11 off of that, and I'm saying I see him as a 30 touchdown type of guy, and he's somebody that's he's made his entire career, not necessarily on volume, but being hyper efficient with his touchdown rate of somebody that we've always looked at and said, okay, we don't care that the norm is 4.5% or 5%. His norm is 5.5%, and it will always be that way, even though he's not the rushing guy that Lamar Jackson gets to excuse that away. It's somebody that is hyper efficient, and that hyper efficiency dropped last year. So I'm not expecting volume to make up for that because it hasn't been his game in a decade. So, and also you look at Robert Saleh. I know he's a defensive minded head coach, but I do think he has some say in the offense as the head coach, and they're going to run the ball. They like to run the ball, and they have the pieces to do so as well. But any other
think that Matt LaFleur, as the head coach and offensive coordinator and offensive designer, would have had a say in the offense too, but that didn't happen last year. So
that was a colossal mess, and that is honestly going to take a whole other show to talk about everything that Matt LaFleur did last year, or Mike LaFleur did last year. Was horrific. But any other Jets we want to talk about here? Just throw out some names. You got Alan Lazard coming to town. And I view Aaron Rodgers as a low-end QB1, high-end QB2 for 2023 dynasty-wise. He's outside my top 20 due to that age. But any other Jets you want to talk about, you have the backup running back situation. You got Abanikanda coming to town, Tyler Conklin at tight end, Alan Lazard getting the big deal. Mecole Hardman.
Mecole Hardman.
The answer could be no. I perfectly accept the answer of no.
The answer to Mecole Hardman is no. I'll talk. I think Zonovan Knight is the backup running back to have there. I don't like Abanikanda at all. Regardless of his talent, he was a terrible, literally bottom of the barrel pass blocker. And if you've got a 40-year-old quarterback, you cannot put a bad pass blocker on the field with him. I mean, he was a guy who got pulled at the end of games, when he was at Pitt because he was so bad in pass protection, literally as bad as I've ever seen.
It was so bad.
Players. So I don't know how he gets on the field, especially since Michael Carter's been there. They trust him, kind of the same type of player. I think they like Zonovan Knight. I don't think he's a special player, but I think he's a guy who could get some touchdowns. Who, if there's a backup to own there, he's the guy I want. He's the kind of zero RB guy I'll take a shot on.
See, I'm fairly out on Michael Carter. I never was a huge fan of the prospect, but I do still view him as I still view him as the 1A to Abanikanda. Honestly, is 1B if Breece Hall was hurt. I don't view Zonovan Knight as that great of a player, and I think we saw him after a pretty strong start really falter at the end. He was completely shut down, 100% ineffective. And sure, Abanikanda is unusable as a pass blocker, but he is a big guy that can be a good complement to Michael Carter as a less wiggle Javonte Williams to Michael Carter at UNC. I think it could be a thunder and lightning thing with some emphasis on the Thunder. But let's talk about some other teams. A team that is not heading in the right direction, but still is in the same division. The New England Patriots. Yay! This team that I believe will be finishing in last place for the first time in like decades of the AFC East. So Faith wrote about the amazing tight end room that the New England Patriots have. And that's not even sarcastic. It's not a bad room, and it's one that is somewhat interesting for fantasy. I'm curious. I feel like you're going to disagree, but Mike Gesicki right now is going off the board as a tight end 3, late tight end 2, and somebody that I've seen talked about a lot on Twitter of being a very popular late grab. We're always trying to find that athletic Juwan Johnson, the George Kittle before he broke out type of guys, the Mark Andrews before he broke out, the new thing at tight end. A lot of people aren't expecting that of Mike Gesicki, but you could get Gerald Everett type of value that we got last year. So are we undervaluing Are we undervaluing Mike Gesicki? Are we overlooking Hunter Henry? Any thoughts on the New England tight end room?
I try to think about them as little as possible. It's kind of the danger with the position, right? Is that we're looking for guys with kind of elite athleticism, but so many of them just don't turn out. Gesicki's one, Noah Fant's another. That kind of player they just turn into like combine warriors, and that's all they ever do.
And there's a million others that are getting first round capital that we don't even mention. Kahale Warring, anybody? Huh? No? All right. I'll be quiet.
So yeah, I just don't. He's had opportunities, right? It's not like they've never gotten on the field. He's never gotten on the field, and it's like why can't this guy get snaps? He's gotten snaps. He's just never done anything with it, and I don't expect anything to change here.
Yeah, it's just
when you look at Bill O'Brien's time in Houston, they never had any kind of production out of their tight end. A few random touchdowns, but it's not like they were ever a tight end heavy offense.
See, what was interesting, and it's completely different to talk about the old New England tight end room to this one, but if you look at Bill O'Brien's time under Bill Belichick back in New England some time ago, it was a very tight end heavy usage. And even in Houston, sure, we weren't interested that much, but that there were still targets and routes run going to the tight end position. They were just not really relevant because it was freaking Houston. Now, you could ask the question, is New England any different than freaking Houston offensively nowadays? And I could answer you right now and say, no, it's not. But if I miss out on everybody, it's a tight end premium league and people are taking multiple tight ends, I don't mind taking a stab on Mike Gesicki just because there is so little offensive weapons there. I don't blame Mike Gesicki for not being used in last year because it was a very much non-scheme fit with the new head coach coming in. But you have Juju is still not over a knee injury. You have Devontae Parker, a meh outside receiver. Tyquan Thornton's not touching the slot. Jacoby Myers is gone. Mike Gesicki could play a lot of snaps in the slot, and I'm interested in that type of usage. Even if it's low-end tight end one numbers, he'll still double his ADP potentially. So late stab, I don't mind at all. I don't mind throwing him in as a dynasty trade of I want someone else, but I'm going to ask them to throw in Mike Gesicki as a streamer. I've never been a fan. I want to get that straight, but I do recognize the opportunity that he does have in New England.
If Mike Gesicki's my number one tight end, I'm actively looking to find someone better.
Oh, it's you play him week one and cut him if he is your starting number one. You're streaming, you're betting on streaming if you're waiting 15 plus rounds to draft a tight end. But let's talk about the other guys in New England. Let's not. But Mac Jones. I want to start with the super flex. Let's get this one out of the way. Mac Jones, is he the quarterback in 2024 or not?
Yes.
Ooh. Probably. That is not my answer, but go on.
I mean, what's their option? I mean, unless it's Trey Lance, they're not going to be bad enough to get into the top 5 and get a Caleb Williams or Drake May. I don't think a Bill Belichick team is going to trust someone that they would draft, at the kind of. If you get someone, you're basically probably drafting someone where they drafted Mac Jones, right? You're just getting someone of that caliber. So I would expect that I think things would have to go very, very badly for him to kind of not be the default option in 2024.
I think things are going to go really badly for the Patriots in 2023. Maybe not top 5 bad. Bill Belichick's too good to be a bottom 5 team in the NFL. But I do think they could be picking inside the top 10, maybe top 12. And that's because I think the Dolphins are going to be a force to be reckoned with. The Bills are always going to be good because of Josh Allen. And I do believe the Jets are going to have a productive season. They have a very tough division to face against. And they have Mac Jones, who's just not a good quarterback. So, it was something we questioned about what the ceiling was as well coming out. So, how much longer are we going to give him to hit this low ceiling that he may have? So, I don't want to talk too much about Mac Jones, but I don't expect him to be starting for the Patriots in 2024. So, if I can get anything for him, my eyes glaze over when I think about drafting him. But let's talk about.
I traded him in a super flex league. I traded him for Chris Godwin, and I would have a super flex league that I needed quarterbacks. I desperately needed quarterbacks in that league, and I still was happy to move him for Chris Godwin.
That is unbelievable. That's fantastic. Well done. Do better to the other guy. We'll do the do better to that one. Oh my goodness. But let's talk about. Let's power through these before we get to eat our dessert from Roger Stevenson at the end of the talk. Receivers, Tyquan Thornton being thrown down around as a deep sleeper for no reason because it's a lukewarm situation. Juju coming off a disappointing year with the Chiefs, honestly, by fantasy standards. Devontae Parker.
Nope.
There any interest in any Patriots wide receivers?
Nope.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I agree, and that's my basis for having some slight interest in Mike Gesicki. Anyway, Ramondre Stevenson is going to get so much work, in my opinion. I know there's some rumors right now if they're going to rotate some guys. He is going to get every touch that he could possibly handle because he is the only player on this offense that will be able to move the ball. The only issue right now for me for Dynasty, and the only reason I don't have him as a locked-in top 10 guy, it's a contract year. What happens to Ramondre Stevenson when he hits free agency? We've already seen Patriots happily let Damien Harris walk. They've let, I don't know the last time the Patriots have paid a running back big money. It's not the way they operate. It's not the way they should operate, especially if they're a bad team. They won't be paying a running back. So, Ramondre Stevenson, what's your look at for Dynasty right now?
Yeah, I think you kind of nailed it on the head. I mean, he's a guy who I expect to be very good this year, and next year and beyond, I have no idea what his situation is going to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, he doesn't belong in that top tier of kind of elite guys who are kind of situation independent, who are good enough to transcend any situation they're in. So he belongs in that next year, kind of with the Tony Pollards and other Dalvin Cook and Joe Mixon and all those guys who are, we know are going to be good this year, but we have no idea what's going to happen next year or going forward.
Yeah. It's almost similar to James Conner when he left the Steelers in type of a way, or the last year of James Conner on the Steelers, of a guy that was a day 3 situation. He was good. He was very good on volume, and he went on to have good years on bad teams despite just because of the volume. And I think that type of season is what we could see from Ramondre Stevenson in 2023. The only question is, where does he latch on next? Does he get to be that big bell cow, or is he splitting a workload? Time will tell. I always like cashing out on running backs, but I'm willing to buy Ramondre Stevenson if I'm contending, because I do believe he's going to have a monster season. And also, if you have monster seasons, you're going to be, you will get rewarded somewhere.
Yeah, I guess the thing I would say is he's a running back who's not getting any younger, right? You just said he's in his contract year. That's his 4th year. The Dynasty community is extremely hesitant to invest anything in running backs who are exhausted their rookie contract. So Alexander Mattison, who we talked about last week, has a job now, and you still you can't find a trade for a 1st-round pick for him. So if Stevenson's a guy I would be okay cashing out on if I can get peak value on.
Wait, hold on. Can I need to issue an apology because I am completely wrong with Ramondre Stevenson. I am a year off. He is not an impending free agent. So my entire argument against him right there is null and void. Because I think he's going to have a great year. He does have 2 more years under contract. He was drafted in 2021, so we are only into his third.
I don't think it changes the point, though, right? Because, knowing how Belichick operates and how he's going to want to get – there's no reason to expect that they're not going to bring in competition for him next year, no matter how good he is, right? Yeah. So I still think he's a guy who belongs in the kind of the tier after the elites who are kind of situation independent, like we said. We don't know what's going to happen with him next year, regardless of how well he does. So, like I said, if I can get an elite price for him, I'm okay cashing out.
Yeah, and I my last thing on him as well. I think what a lot of people should be doing at times is looking at the running back room as a whole. When you look at this room, Ramondre Stevenson will be the guy this year. We're confident about that, and that's because we don't care about guys like Kevin Harris. We don't care about Pierre Strong. We don't, it's not a talented room. But what that means is that they're going to notice that this year. They're going to notice that they are leaning on Stevenson. He misses a game, they're going to struggle. And if they try to work someone else in, it's not going to be as effective as Stevenson. What they do then next year is they invest. We saw a similar thing with Travis Etienne, where he was on the field a lot because Jermichael Hasty was the other option. That's not good. And then they went out and added Tank Bigsby. The Seahawks had Kenneth Walker. It was great. Then he got hurt. They had no one else. They spent a 2nd-round pick on Zach Charbonnet. So it's added reasons to add depth. It's why Joe Mixon survived for so long in Cincinnati, was because, they had Samaje Perine for the last 2 years. That's good. That's fine. Mixon could do his thing. Perine could do his. But in New England, they don't have that 1B. So any other guys you want to talk about with New England? I understand if you want to move on and forget this ever happened because of what we expect the New England Patriots to be. And you got your team next.
Yeah, my only pushback is I don't think they're going to be as bad a team as you do. It's
I think they max out at 7
They'll find
wins.
a way.
They max out at 7 wins.
7-8 wins is, you're still picking in the early double digits. So they're not. I don't think they're that bad a team.
We saw the the Panthers move up from 11 or 12, right? Move all the way up to number 1. If they need to move up for a guy, they identify someone. They will do that. If they need to flip Mac Jones for a 3rd round pick, a 4th round pick, whatever they need to do, maybe that happens too. Or maybe it's a Trey Lance. Either way, I just don't think Mac Jones shows enough Belichick at the end of the rope here. I don't see why he sticks around with him. But let's move on to the Green Bay Packer, to the NFC North. You wrote about the Packers, your Go Pack Go. I'll let you take it away with your look inside.
Yeah, so I wrote about Christian Watson. I think he is kind of the poster boy for the possible breakout of the year, for a lot of reasons, primarily because I think the offense is going to be a lot better. We talked about it when we talked about the Jets and Aaron Rodgers. I think he really kind of hijacked that offense, and he did things. The way Aaron Rodgers wants to and kind of demands to play is kind of antithetical to the way that offense needs to run. LaFleur came from the Shanahan McVay kind of coaching tree. It's a very different offense than the kind of West Coast-ish style that Aaron Rodgers wants to run. And he's actively said, I don't like playing with pre-snap motion. He wants to run the play clock down every time, every snap, to get a look at where the defense is. Whereas, the reason the league is going to pre-snap motion is you can dictate where the defense has to line up instead of just reacting. Aaron Rodgers is playing a reactive game. The route combinations that LaFleur wants to run are very different. Like Aaron Rodgers wanted to throw vertical routes to where it's, the Shanahan kind of offense runs kind of horizontal routes. Think about what Deebo Samuel does. That's kind of the way they want to run. That's the way the offense needs to run. They kind of give him kind of two-way play calls, and he would kind of, from what we can tell, just kind of defer to passing instead of running. Even in situations like if you're going to be a team that wants to run that's going to run as much as they have, you still have to be willing to run into, say, 8-man boxes, right? You can't just not do it. You have to show that you're willing to do it to kind of pull the defense out.
Otherwise, you're very predictable if you don't do that.
Exactly. And that offense became very predictable with him at the helm. So I think this is going to be a very different looking offense, almost diametrically opposite of the way it ran last year. And they were very inefficient last year, right? They were very slow. They were terrible inside the red zone. They were terrible inside the 10. They were terrible inside the 5. So I think regardless, Jordan Love doesn't need to be a better quarterback than Aaron Rodgers to be a better quarterback for this offense. And I think he's going to be a very good kind of point guard style quarterback. He's going to run the offense the way LaFleur wants it run. He's going to run the offense the way it's designed to run. He's going to have time with the receivers. We said Aaron Rodgers didn't show up for OTAs last year with basically a receiving core that was Allen Lazard and a bunch of rookies. So they needed time together. Christian Watson didn't get that time at all because Aaron Rodgers didn't show up for OTAs. And then
Watson had the hamstring injury, right? I think.
Well, he had knee surgery, right?
Knee surgery, that was it. Yeah.
He had to do a cleanup for an injury or an issue that he had in college that never got taken care of. So he missed a lot of time in training camp. Came back, kind of in time. And I wrote about this in the piece where I thought, we all saw the drop pass on the first snap from scrimmage. I kind of blame LaFleur for that because he kind of refused to get him in the preseason games when he had come back for practice. Get him a couple touches, right? Get him a bubble screen and let him run out of bounds if you're afraid of him getting hurt. But get him some competitive touches outside of practice so that his first NFL touch doesn't come on, a 50-yard bomb from Aaron Rodgers when he had this guy beat. And so I think that kind of got him off to a bad start. And then there were the injuries, right? He had multiple hamstring issues, recurring hamstring issues. He had a concussion, and then he had to come out of a game because of a potential, what they thought was a concussion, but really wasn't. It just turned out to be kind of an abundance of caution thing. So he really kind of missed, I said in the article, if you look at his games played, it looks like he played 14 games, but it really should be about 12 because he missed basically more than 2 full halves of games. So because the injuries came very early in those games, he had a hamstring re-injury early in the Giants game in London. And then once he got everything going, right, he had the time together, he got healthy. Then we saw the explosion week 10 in Dallas.
Massive end to the season.
Yeah. And then that's when you saw the targets come. If you looked at the game, the final game against Detroit, which was a de facto playoff game, right? He was Rodgers' most trusted receiver, even though we saw Rodgers kind of show him up in that Rams Monday night game, right, where he had Watson wide open and he threw it at his feet because he didn't run the right route or whatever. And then he made a comment about it in the post-game interview where he said if he wants to be the superstar touchdown maker, then he needs to learn to run the right routes, which is
he just misses Devontae Adams so much, man. Where he didn't have to say a word. They just looked at each other. They knew what each other were going to do.
Yeah, I mean, but for all my problems with Aaron Rodgers, that was kind of the end. That was it.
Oh, sure. It's petty as hell. It was not what you want from your leader.
It was beyond petty. He's always been kind of, he's always had the terrible body language and everything. So he's been he's not a leader. We'll move on from that. I expect this offense to be a much better offense. I expect Christian Watson to be the focus of the passing game. He's an elite athlete, all-time athlete. Like, I think he had one of the 6 best RAS scores of all time. You have to go back to like Calvin Johnson, and no one's Calvin Johnson. I'm not comparing him to Calvin Johnson.
Christian Watson's Calvin Johnson per Joel here. Yeah, okay. That's my thing. Is just jumping on everything you say. Go on.
But as a size adjusted athleticism score, you kind of have to go back to that, to that level of player to find someone that's similar. So he's going to get more opportunities. He needed kind of an offseason in the weight room. He needs to get stronger. That was obvious. They ran him some jet sweeps and stuff like that, where it was, he would get tackled by guys who should not be tackling him. That was obvious. So, and if you think about it, I don't want to get too long-winded here, but when these rookies come into the league, right, after their whatever bowl game or championship game, playoff game, whatever, they have to go through the Senior Bowl. They have practices there. They have to go get ready for the combine. Then they go to rookie mini camp, and then they go to OTAs. And then they get training camp, blah blah blah. They never really get time to just get in the weight room with a nutritionist, with an NFL level strength coach. So that's why these guys make second year leaps, right? Now they have that. They have that opportunity. He's going to get stronger. He should only get better. He's going to be healthy. I think the pieces are there for him to be, to get himself into a tier with the Garrett Wilsons and Chris Olaves and Drake Londons that we saw come out of this draft class last year.
He does have that ceiling. It's all because of the athletic traits that you mentioned. I completely agree with the play strength because that was my worry for him coming out, and I'm still not 100% convinced he's much more than a one-trick pony. We have to see what else he can do beyond running straight deep down, catching the ball, because he's big, fast, and really damn good at doing exactly that. I don't want to insult his game in any way because he had an incredible end to the season, and scoring touchdowns is no easy feat. But I'm in on this Packers offense to transition a little bit because I think the whole team is good. This is a really well put together offense of Christian Watson, whether I think he's an alpha or not, will take the top off defenses and do exactly what you want your wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 to do. He will stretch the field. And you have Jaden Reed, in the second round, somebody I love and have talked too much about on this show already, to be somebody that takes, the seam and works the slot and beats people underneath. It's a organized offense in that way. You have Aaron Jones, one of the better receiving backs in the league. You have a good duo of a running back of A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones, a group that I've seen being thrown around as the best running back room in football on some polls that are coming out because that's the June media cycle. It's a good team. And I think Jordan Love will be a very big – all he has to do is be competent. I think he's capable of doing that and then some. He was a project. He took some years, and he's looked all right in the few times we've seen him. He's looked good. I'm hoping for the best. I'm of a positive mindset with Julian Love or with Jordan Love. I keep on messing up. It's
the
funny,
IDP guy and you coming out.
Yeah, it's all the time. My college friends make fun of me all the time for it. But it's funny because we're a show here with two guys that are actually in on Jordan Love and the Packers, and I feel like the consensus is it's not that way. But
yeah, so getting back to Love, I mean, when you obviously small sample size, caveats apply, but if you look at kind of his metrics last year and his efficiency metrics, he was literally as good as any quarterback in the league, right? Obviously, yeah, let's rein it in. I'm not saying he's Patrick Mahomes, so small sample size, but it's better that he showed those things than he didn't, right? And the fact is that as much of a pain in the ass as Aaron Rodgers is to deal with, he is a legend. He's an inner circle Hall of Famer. He's a 4-time MVP. This organization did not need to let him go if they didn't think they had a replacement. This team believes in Jordan Love, right? 100%. They would not have
extended him.
They would not have let Aaron Rodgers go if they didn't believe that Jordan Love could be the guy to run this offense. I mean, that's really the bottom line. He's had 3 years. He's not a rookie coming in, right? He's had 3 years in the league. He made a significant jump last year, right? Mechanically wise. They brought in Tom Clements, who was Rodgers' old quarterback coach, and he made a big difference, right? He stayed around. He didn't follow Aaron Rodgers to New York. He's still in Green Bay because he wants to work with Jordan Love. So he made a huge step last year. This team believes in him, right? We always say when we talk about the draft, we have to listen to what NFL front offices say. This front office is saying that they believe in Jordan Love.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with them. You look at the division as well. You know, I think the Bears could take a leap, but the defense is not at all close to playoff ready. The Lions, I think, are being drastically overvalued right now. I think they'll be fine, but people are talking to them as a 10-win team. I don't see it. And the Vikings, I think many are expecting to take a step back from their outlier type of season last year of one-score games going their way. So that all shapes up for this to be, a division that the Packers have owned in the past. Packers could very well take it again. I personally have already taken the over on Packers wins at I think 7.5 or something like that, 8.5 maybe. It's quite low, Vegas's expectations, and I'm in. I'm in on the Packers.
Yeah, I mean they won 8 games last year. They obviously should have won more. There was both Detroit games. Aaron Rodgers actively cost them because he threw terrible interceptions. Multiple. I think he threw 3 in each game.
In the red zone.
Yeah, exactly. If Jordan Love is just as good as Aaron Rodgers was last year, which isn't elite by any means, right?
It was average.
We're not comparing Jordan Love to MVP level Aaron Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers was not MVP level Aaron Rodgers last year. He just has to be efficient, right? As long as he's not killing them with turnovers, he's going to be. And you said it, this team's got talent. So they've got 8 first-round picks on the defense. I have my issues with them bringing back Joe Barry, but continuity is a thing. So
special team god Joe Barry.
I think this team could be. I don't. The NFC's wide open, right? So I don't want to get to make this this is a dynasty show. I don't want to make this an NFL
Super Bowl contending fantasy football.
I think this is going to be a better offense than people expect. I think this is a better team than people expect.
We're on the same page with that. Let's jump into some of our trades. We took off last week because we gave you guys 6 teams to talk about. This week, Do Better Trades returns. I want to talk about some of the trades we've seen going on in the Dynasty community. Let's start off with, at the very top here, pull up the right banner here, Devontae Adams being traded for Jerry Jeudy and a 2024 second. My first instinct is slamming the do better home of the side I want, Davante Adams. But I won't lie, I've hesitated a little bit in my head since. Give me some thoughts, because I do like my Jerry Jeudy.
So I wanted to get your take on this because we talked about both guys last week, right?
I know. I knew you were gonna bring it up.
So I took the Jeudy side on this. I had Adams. So for context, this is an orphan that I took over and went through a dispersal. And dispersal had a lot of kind of older assets, right? Derrick Henry, that kind of player. Davante Adams was in it.
Golden Tate. Yeah.
So yeah, this is it's actually it's a 48 team 4-copy kind of relegation league. So I took it over and over, and it's in the lowest tier. So I wanted to get younger with this team just because I don't think it's super competitive. So yeah, I took the Jeudy side. I didn't feel good about it. I talked up Davante Adams quite a bit, but I think this is kind of the tear down that you have to be looking at. If you want to move off of Adams, this is kind of the best deal you're going to get, right?
Yeah, and that's as you're talking through, that's what was going through my head exactly. I have Davante Adams in dynasty leagues. I think about what I could get. I don't know if I could get this. I really don't, because people value age that much. You look at Davante Adams, 30 years old. I raised some concerns with him last week of what I think this offense could look like without the deep targets that Derek Carr gave him last year. I get it. And if I'm looking at a rebuild in any way, I would probably go with the Jerry Jeudy side. If I'm still able to contend, I probably hold Davante Adams and just ride that talent as far as I possibly can. And speaking of talent, we have a Justin Jefferson trade here. I don't know if I've ever seen a Justin Jefferson trade. Justin Jefferson for Anthony Richardson. This is a super flex league. Anthony Richardson, Zach Charbonnet, 2 2024 first and 2 2024 seconds. So my goodness, we are getting a haul to tear down this roster, rebuild it through young rookies and picks. But you're giving up Justin Jefferson. What do you got here?
So yeah, I wanted to get your take on this one. I was offered Justin Jefferson, and I turned it down.
Yeah.
My question is, would you take this? I mean, would you give this for Patrick Mahomes? That's a lot, right?
Mahomes.
Anthony Richardson, who could
it's the equivalent of a top 3 first, 2 2024 first, 2 2024 seconds, and you're giving up what? You're giving up 4. No, you're
this
giving
is
up
like 5 firsts,
top
right?
12 picks and a top
Anthony
5.
Richardson is 2 firsts at least to get to the 102. Charbonnet's a first, and then you got 2 2024 first. This is 5 firsts plus 2 seconds. 2 seconds doesn't equal a first, but this is a lot. I don't know if I would give this for Patrick Mahomes.
It handicaps the team too much.
This is a start 10.
I probably wouldn't.
It's too much. This is a contending team. I would love to have Justin Jefferson, but this is just way too much.
Yeah, it's just the
There's
risk.
a line, and I think this crosses it.
No, I agree, and there has to be a line at some point. We talk about. Everyone says you want Justin Jefferson, but this is more or less what it kind of costs to get someone like that. And the risk you take with this is so huge. Let's God forbid Justin Jefferson gets hurt. Justin Jefferson has an all-field issue, something we can't foresee. You're that could happen to anybody. But when you give up 2 firsts and 2 seconds, you're done. Like that. You are in the hole.
And that's really my point here is you lose all your flexibility, right?
Yeah.
Regardless of what happens to Justin Jefferson, this is a start 10.
If you don't
right?
win,
so
if you don't win it all.
If you don't win it all, you are probably screwed if you make this deal. You can get back, you can get back some of that for Jefferson, but you're not going to. I don't think you're going to get this deal. If you're trying to sell Justin Jefferson's. Yeah, I would. I looked at that and said, "Wow, I'm getting offered Justin Jefferson," and then I looked at the other side and went, "I can't give that up. It's just I'm giving up too much."
I understand. My only reason to play devil's advocate of taking the side, I wouldn't, but I do like the idea of getting Justin Jefferson in theory for players that have not proven a thing. Anthony Richardson will have a long leash because of his draft investment, but we have a lot of questions about whether he'll work out long term. Zach Charbonnet has his concerns, as good as a talent as I personally think he is. And beyond the 2021st, we don't even know who that is. And chances are, if you're getting Justin Jefferson, you're probably going to be picking late as well. So that's my devil's advocate, is that there's no sure thing. If I'm giving up Justin Jefferson, I want a sure thing back. So I don't totally love this for either side, but I certainly wouldn't give up all those picks for him. Let's talk.
Yeah. So basically, my concern here is that I'm just giving up too much flexibility.
Yeah. You pigeonhole yourself with no recourse outside of selling Justin Jefferson again. Right. And if you're doing that, that means you're probably going to get less than what you got paid for in the first place. And nobody wants to sell Justin Jefferson. So you loaded up our sheet today. I am appreciative of you, because you got Jamar Chase in here too. Jamar Chase and Chigo Okonkwo, everyone's favorite sleeper tight end, for Geno Smith, Tony Pollard. This is a super flex league, obviously. Geno Smith, Tony Pollard, T. Higgins, Jacoby Myers, Gerald Everett. Give me Jamar Chase and run away with it. Oh my God. Do better. Do better. We can slap that one on here.
So this is a tight end premium, full point tight end premium. So that makes Chigo Okonkwo not a zero in this. He's relevant. Geno Smith, Tony Pollard, and T. Higgins that's a pretty substantial commitment, right? I took the Chase side. But yeah, this is quite a bit. It's a start 10, so there's some value in volume.
Superstar.
Yeah, but there's also Jamar Chase. If this had been just Jamar Chase, I don't think I would have done it. But since I got Chig Okonkwo in the tight end, the full point tight end premium, I thought that was enough to kind of put that over the top.
Yeah, and I love Tony Pollard as much as the next guy, but you're trading away essentially, based on his contract, a contract year Geno Smith, a contract year Tony Pollard, and a contract year T. Higgins, which I don't care about the contract year with T. Higgins. I trust that he's going to get a deal. I trust he honestly stays in Cincinnati. But, I mean, you're upgrading within the organization there. You kind of want to move T. Higgins to get Jamar Chase. So, in that case, you're giving up guys that have a genuine concern of their long-term outlook for somebody that will just help you this year as well as help you next. So, I love the deal. I love everyone else on the other side. Don't get me wrong here. I love Pollard. I like Geno. I think he works out. But I want the superstar. This is the price I'm willing to pay for the superstar.
Yeah, and we kind of talked about, we alluded to Pollard when we were talking about Ramondre Stevenson, and that I expect him to be very good this year. I don't know what his situation is next year.
Yeah, and that's a real concern for all running backs entering free agency. So, another trade here that I found here on Twitter, Deebo and a 2025 first for DK Metcalf. This was interesting to me because I probably would rather the DK side. I don't think it's a quite slam do better thing, but you're getting a first round pick. In my opinion, the tier between Deebo and DK, it's 2 tiers at most. It might just be 1 tier difference, and a first round pick for 1 tier difference. I'm close. I did hesitate on this one.
Yeah, this is where we kind of get into the point scoring value and the dynasty value, right? Because Deebo is going to score points, but he doesn't have a lot of trade value, right? You try and go out in the open market and try and move him. You're not going to get much of it. He's kind of like slightly above, say, like a Mike Evans, and that people are, I think they're afraid of.
They're afraid of the injuries.
He's getting older, the injury history, the kind of the offense, and that he's kind of not going to get the targets he got, 2 years ago when he had his breakout season with McCaffrey there. So yeah, I think Deebo's a really tough guy to move. DK still has kind of some cachet. So yeah, I would do this. I wouldn't feel good about giving up a first to go up, but I would prefer the Metcalf side.
All right, one last one real quick. I want to try to wrap this show up before we hit that hour mark. 2024 first for Desmond Ridder. Give me the 2024 first. I don't care if it's the 112 all day, any day. I saw this on Twitter too, and I kind of freaked out when I saw it, so I want to bring it out.
Where is that deal?
I saw it on
Twitter. I don't have many.
Accepted. No, we're good. We're on the same page here.
I have very few Desmond Ridder shares, but if I could get a 24 first for him, I'd be dropping him in a heartbeat.
And good to see Faith chiming in. Oh, that was 20 minutes ago. Now I'm bad. I'm a bad friend. Either way,
Hi,
thank you
Faith.
all for tuning in. Oh wait, no, that was right now. Hi, Faith. Anyway, thank you all for tuning into the Dynasty After Party. Sorry for that bit of a clumsy there. But you can follow me at Michael__Sicoli on Twitter. You can follow Joel here at the Joel Wirth, and obviously Club Fantasy at Club Fantasy FFL. And again, we talked about Look Inside series. All those articles are on the website at clubfantasyffl.com. Be sure to check them out. They are a must read. Any final thoughts, Joel, for our listeners here?
We've got more coming up this week. I've got a Commanders article on Antonio Gibson coming, and I forgot we got the Lions and your Steelers, right?
Yep, we got Washington. I know Adam House is doing Pitt, and I don't totally know who's doing Detroit, but we'll obviously be talking about all those teams, those three teams next week. So we're gonna jump on into that next week. We're gonna be talking about those three teams. So everyone, good to have you with us tonight. Remember, Dynasty is like a disco ball. It keeps on spinning year round. So join the club every Sunday at 9:30 Eastern. We may change those times. Stay tuned. Again, check out the Twitters for that. Right here with Club Fantasy. Be sure to check us out next week. We'll be doing the same exact thing. Have a good